Alright, look, since everything I'm doing, I've taken too many projects that are way too long to make in a reasonable timeline. So I'm gonna try a new thing, which is basically making shorter videos that are like beneath 10 minutes long, but I'm gonna do this in a
High-tech
series.
Special Forces Unit
And
5.
I call this
Your former
an
unit,
honest
the one that I
retrospective
was a commander
of the
of.
Metal Gear
Stay
series.
tuned.
Sorry, I was just closing my door.
There are 6 members of
So
Foxhound
yeah,
involved in this terrorist
and
activity.
while I am
Psycho
a Metal
Mantis,
Gear
his
fan,
powerful
I'm
psychic
actually going to
abilities.
explain to you why
Sniper
most of
Wolf,
it is
the
crap.
beautiful and deadly
Because here's the thing:
sharpshooter. Decoy
Metal
Octopus,
Gear, the most
master of
iconic series of all
disguise.
time,
Vulcan Raven,
there's only ever
Jonathan
been one
Shaden.
truly flawless product that has been produced from
And
it.
Revolver
The rest,
Ocelot,
meanwhile, are either great,
specialist in interrogation
mediocre,
and a
bad,
formidable
or
gunfighter.
just downright
Finally,
forgettable.
in charge of them,
Now then, before we
Foxhound
begin, I must
Squad leader,
clarify how I am
Liquid
judging this
Snake.
series title by title.
Liquid Snake,
I will be doing it
the man with the secret
through
code name is you.
6 different
The nuclear
metrics.
weapons
Firstly,
disposal facility
story,
covers the whole
2,
island. Be
vibe,
instructed by
3,
codec after you
messages
reach your
made by
target.
the game,
Anyone going
4,
with me?
the
As
gameplay
usual, this
itself,
is a one-man
5, plot and
infiltration mission.
coherence, and
Weapons and
number
equipment
6,
OST?
general sense of fun
Yes.
playing.
This is a top
Now
secret
then,
black op. Don't
let's
expect any
dive into
physical
this
support.
truly complicated topic in the great year of 1987. I'm not sure if many people know this, but Metal Gear Solid, which was produced. Let me see. So, Metal Gear Solid 1 was made in 1998. Now, when you're someone who just discovers what the Metal Gear series is, they assume that this is the beginning. But no. In reality, Metal Gear Solid 1 is not the first game in the series. It's just the mainstream game that allowed the series to encompass an entire cultural hemisphere. Now, before the Solid era of the Metal Gear series, there was just Metal Gear. Now, actually, there were 3 games under the original moniker of Metal Gear. There was one Metal Gear, the first Metal Gear, which was just named Metal Gear. Then there was Metal Gear Snake's Revenge, and then there was Metal Gear Solid Snake. All these games existed between the years of 1987 to 1990. Now, what do I have to say about these games? Well, uh, they're forgettable, but they're important for a very simple reason. They give the lore. They explain why Solid Snake, Big Boss, and the whole technology of Metal Gear are
This
even
is
like
Snake.
big parts of the
Carter, can you
series.
hear me?
Now then,
Loud and clear. What's the situation, Snake?
Looks like the elevator in the
in
back is the only way to
Metal
go.
Gear
Just as
and
I
Metal Gear
expected.
Solid Snake,
You'll have to take the
these
elevator
games
to the
go into
surface
the
and
battles
make sure
between
nobody
Big
sees you.
Boss, who is trying
If
to
you need
form
to,
a
contact me by
military
codec.
only
The
state with
frequency is
nuclear weapons, and
140.85.
Solid Snake is basically trying to save
When
the
you want
world.
to use the codec, push
Past
the
that,
select button.
however,
When
are
I
they
need to
truly
contact you,
important
the codec will
in
beep.
a
When you hear
retrospective?
that noise, press
And
the
not really, to
select
be
button.
honest. They aren't
The codec's
heavily
receiver
considered
directly
in Metal
stimulates the
Gear
small
lore
bones
or
of your
otherwise,
ear.
except in
I
Metal Gear
wonder if
Solid
you
1,
will be
where
able to
I
hear
think
it.
it is Metal
Got
Gear
it.
Solid 2, where
Okay,
things
I'm
like
ready to go.
Zanzibar Land and Big Boss and Metal Gear are important. But also, these Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid Snake are not really considered to be a new player's first choice. They are old games. They were made for, I believe it is the uh, MSX2 and it's just really old computer games. But they are important in terms of narrative contributions. They are canon for a reason, and while their gameplay has evolved, they weren't the standard we know about the Metal Gear series yet. Oh, and there's also another game I mentioned. There was the Metal Gear Snake's Revenge. Um, Look, about this game, everyone collectively agrees to never mention it. In fact, it's more actively hated and forgotten and universally agreed to be more hated than the world has to the Israeli Palestine conflict. It's essentially Metal Gear Snake's Revenge is essentially the we have Metal Gear at home joke. It's a side hustle that was never really canonized. In fact, it's an American game. It was made by Konami without Kojima himself. involved. It was purely a cash grab for the American market. However, while it can be said that without its existence, here's the thing: Metal Gear Snake's Revenge was actually so bad that Kojima wanted to rectify this mistake by making Metal Gear Solid Snake. So, really, without Metal Gear Snake's Revenge, we would have never had the Metal Gear series. And aside from that, this is where we enter the first game that most people consider when looking at the Metal Gear Solid series. That also is, well, it has a difficult position in my analysis. As a very quick editing note, um, something I will go into later on, not in this video, but as we go on further into the retrospect of the entire series, is that I think Hideo Kojima was a visionary and an artist in many ways, and I quite respect what he did. However, there are many things that I believe I simply think he got hooked to his own creative genius in a way that kind of made much of his work suffer later on. So yeah, you'll understand when we eventually get round to it. Metal Gear Solid 1, when Kojima began to cook and snore on his own product. Now, just to clarify, I have played this game. I both hate it and I love it. And I have both considered just rage quitting at the final boss, whilst also being able to complete it for the purposes of this video. Now, let me just start off by saying this. I like the story because while I have seen the super secret mega weapon about needing to be destroyed plotline a lot in media, I appreciate how they, in this game, yeah, they still do it, but it's in a clever way, as instead of it being a typical destroy the target game, it's a figure out why people are even terrified about it and why some people still want to keep it storyline. Now then, if you don't want spoilers, leave this entire video. For the rest of you, the plot of Metal Gear Solid 1 is as follows. The United States' secret Alaskan base of Shadow Moses has been under siege by a group of genetically modified terrorists who have taken over and are threatening to launch a nuke if their demands are not met. Solid Snake is sent in to defeat the terrorists and destroy the secret superweapon codenamed Metal Gear before it is revealed to the world and used to seize the remains of Big Boss and the vaccine for the Foxdie virus. But along the way, Solid Snake begins to realize just how deep this rabbit hole goes, and how he's already been marked for death alongside the terrorists. Alright, so let's talk about the game. So, story wise, plot wise, I actually think the characters are pretty well written. Solid Snake makes for a wonderful and cool character for his basic sense of I'm tired of this bullshit personality. Is he melodramatic as hell? Yes. Still very enjoyable as a character? Absolutely. Then you have his best friend, Altagon. I love this character, man. He works for the Metal Gear project because he wants to build robots, but I like how his legacy of his family being involved with anything nuclear just comes back to haunt him. And it's kind of hilarious in a way, so I quite enjoy that. Then there's Colonel Campbell. Is he a lying bastard? Yes. However, he's a very nuanced lying bastard. And he is an intriguing character nonetheless. But, there's Meryl, the girl, the redhead. I think she's absolutely useless. She takes the I'm not like other girls to an extreme. And as a love interest, I wouldn't really say she makes a lot of sense. However, to not seem like a culture war asshole, I will put two examples actually of two well done female characters in the game. Firstly, I unironically enjoy Sniper Wolf. She is a free-spirited wolf character who has had to survive in a world of crap and came out of it stronger than ever, and is the only sort of enemy who sees Snake as a hero. And then there's what's her name? Naomi Hunter. Yeah, Naomi
There are
Hunter.
only 18
I
hours left
enjoy her
until
as
your
a character
deadline.
because
You've got to
her
hurry.
story, her
Wow,
double
you must be
agent
crazy to
secret
fly behind in this
background,
kind of
her
weather.
Who's that?
obsession with
Oh,
jeans.
sorry. I haven't
It
introduced
was very
myself yet.
thought-provoking
This
to
is
listen to
Mainland.
her talk about
She's
how she
assigned to us as
views
our
them and
visual
how
and data processing
she believes
specialist.
that, like,
She's
human
assigned to
genes can
codec,
have
as well as
access
the
to
stones on the air
memories, to
system.
legacy, and so on.
Contact
It
her if
was
you
a
have any
very
questions about
interesting
either of
thing
them.
to listen about.
Nice to
And
meet you,
then,
Snake.
okay, and then
Sounds
there's
like
Liquid
speaks
Snake. Okay,
about
to
a
be
living
honest,
legend like
I don't
yourself.
think Liquid Snake is as good as a
What's
villain
wrong?
as many people make him
Nothing.
out to be. I find
I
him
just didn't
very
expect a world-class
melodramatic
designer
and
of
kind
military
of
technology to be so
like self-defeating in his own way,
Just
and
flattering.
he's way too
No, I'm
theatrical to be
serious.
kind of taken
Well, I know I won't
seriously.
be bored for the next 18
But
hours.
like
Come on.
he's intriguing
I
nonetheless for
can't
his
believe I'm so
obsession with
proud by
like
the famous
genes,
solid
legacy, the
snake.
past,
But
and
I'm surprised.
his
You're very
massive
bold
daddy
for a
issues.
trained killer.
And then there's all the
Looks like we
other
both have a
sprinkled in
lot to
little
learn
bits of the
about each
plot line.
other.
I think Metal Gear
Yeah,
is done very
I'm
well
looking
in this
forward to
game.
learning
The
about the man
Fox
behind
Die
the legend.
virus
But first,
and
let me
all that other
explain about
stuff.
your
I think it's
silicon radar
very
system.
well written, this game. And obviously there are many
Right now
flaws,
in the
but
middle
I
you
enjoy it
see the
nonetheless. And
snake.
then there's the
The red
messages about
dots are the
arms
enemies, and
races,
the blue
nuclear
cone shape
proliferation,
represents their
corporate
field of
warfare
vision.
in the Pentagon,
Be careful,
and the
Snake.
deceit of
The genome
authorities,
soldiers
which
have
is a very
highly developed
resonant
senses
message
of
that
hearing and
we can
vision due
still
to the
feel
gene
today.
therapy.
Yeah, but then there's the other metrics I
Don't let them
mentioned.
see you.
While I find
First,
the
I want you to
plot,
infiltrate the
the
disposal
vibes,
site and
and
look for the
the
DARPA chief.
themes of Metal Gear
The
Solid
DARPA
1 to
chief was
be
injected with the
very
same
good,
GPS transmitting
the
nanomachine
rest
as a
of the
shield.
things I
He should
mentioned,
appear
that
on your
being
radar as a green dot.
Gather whatever
gameplay
information you can from that DARPA
and
terrorist.
the general
From
sense
mine,
of
that
fun,
is.
to be less so, because like, okay, here's the thing. Metal Gear Solid 1 was
Snake,
revolutionary
your
for its
radar isn't
time for
affected by
its
the weather, but if you're discovered by an
implementation
enemy,
of
you won't
stealth
be able to
mechanics
use it.
and
Yes,
stealth
it gets
related
jammed easily,
combat.
I'm afraid.
And for the
Yes,
time, I'm
it's all
sure it
based
was
on
very
currently
good, but
existing
when you look at
technology.
it from
You won't
a
be able to use
modern
it in an area
perspective,
with
with
strong
how
harmonic
games have evolved
resonance.
since
So be
then, I
careful.
think it's
We'll be
absolute
monitoring your
trollop.
movements by
The
radar. So
fighting
contact us by
was
codec
crap.
anytime
The
you want.
stealth was fine.
Got it. I'll
Boss
call
fights
about
were
feeling
decent.
lonely.
Like, I think it
Seriously,
was.
Snake, we're here to back you
I
up, so
think the
don't
one I
call. Give me
enjoyed the
some
most
information or
was
dice.
the
I'm
what's it
also in
called?
charge of your
The
mission
Hind
here.
D
Contact
fight.
me if you want me to
But
record your
the
current
Metal Gear
status. My
Rex, the
frequency
Metal
is
Gear Rex boss fight,
140
that one made me want to
196.
rage quit
It's
so
a
hard
dedicated
because of the
frequency for sending
mixture
data.
of horrible
Don't
camera work,
forget it.
the timing of how things
Remember,
like
except for your
would
binoculars, you're
react,
naked.
the unfair
You've got to rid
tracking
yourself of
missiles,
whatever
the
weapons you can
general
find.
BS of just
And remember,
firing a weapon,
first I'm strip
the
searched by
inability to
Dr.
find
Mediocre, and then all my
rations.
weapons are taken away.
Uh,
Imagine yourself put in that position.
it made the game
Well,
very
if you make it
unfun
back
for
in
me
one
at
piece,
very
maybe I'll
certain
let you do
points.
a strip search on me.
However,
I'll hold you
in
to that,
a
Doctor.
broad
By the
general
way,
sense,
sorry to
the
disappoint,
game
but I did
was
manage to
fun.
smuggle out my
I will not
scores.
deny that.
How
I
did you
had a
do
good time
that?
playing.
On my
However, it was
stomach.
mostly because I
Thanks
was
to the
more
shot you
interested
gave me
in the
that suppressed
plot
my stomach
rather than
juices.
the gameplay. In
Cigarettes?
fact,
How
I
are
would
those
say
going to
that
help you?
if you
You
consider
never know.
cutting off your fingers as fun, as long as you're getting an amazing story alongside with it, then yes, this game is fun in that sense. However, there is a
If you
larger
want to
issue
get
with this
in,
game
there's the
and the
front
bigger
door.
series moving forward, and it's
It's the
not quite
fastest
noticeable
way,
in the
but there's still
gameplay
the
or the
risk of
immediate
being
plot.
spotted by the enemy.
But
I can't
the
just
main
knock on the
problem
door and ask
is
them to
the
let me in.
legend of Big Boss
There's
within the
one
Metal
sentry on
Gear
the left
canon.
and one on the
But
right.
you will begin
They're
to
armed with
understand
5.56
as we go on with
pineapples.
this series, and you will see what I am talking about. Now then, let's go into the actual perfect Metal Gear game, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which I will talk
What
about
about the
in the
air
next
duct near
video
the
because I
door?
want to build up my confidence with this one. Hi, this is just a quick
There's an
little
authorized
disclaimer
duct
at
on
the
the
end of the
second
video, but
floor.
I wanted to apologize for my lack of uploads, and it's because I
I
was
can't
suffering
see
with a
it from here.
motivational crisis and I was having a difficult time, because I was engaging in like hour-long
Only you
projects
decide the
or
best
projects that
COA.
were
We're counting
long
on you,
and
Snake.
were difficult for me to get through. So I'm not sure why either if I want to put them down or if I still want to continue them. But I do know I would like to do these kind of videos for a while, talk about the Metal Gear series as a retrospect and all that. Maybe I can get back to my what's it called? Spy X Family, and I also plan on doing a every political party in the UK video too. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you soon.